Welcome to the Ward 6 debate, brought to you by This Time in History. And we also have a not-for-profit foundation called Triumph Over Trauma. Please find them on Instagram, Twitter. They have a GoFundMe account, and help them out if you can. Definitely share it. I am your host, Matthew. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, my partner in crime, Ebony.
Hello.
And our guests today include Ward 6 candidates Michael Arkin and Hope Shearer. I'm getting better at that. You know what, Michael, you were here first. Let's start with you. You can have 2 minutes to introduce yourself and talk about a couple points to your platform, and then Hope, you'll follow up with that. Go ahead, Michael.
Good afternoon. On our second National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, I acknowledge that we live in a city on the traditional territory of many nations, and that Toronto is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I acknowledge with respect that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. And now to politics. We need and deserve a better Toronto. We need and deserve a city that listens to us, a city that responds quickly and effectively to our concerns and complaints, a city that is safe, affordable, and adapted to climate change. We don't have that city now, and that's why I'm running to be the next Ward 6 councillor. We've had years of neglect. On issues small and large, we've experienced years of listening without action, process without progress, and deliberation without delivery. Neighborhood issues like flooding and industrial nuisances in Ancaster, noisy and speeding cars in Bathurst Manor, and the unplowed Torresdale path across the Finch Hydro corridor have been neglected and ignored. We can add to that small sample of issues the missing leadership and hard choices necessary to address issues throughout our ward: dangerous traffic, inadequate TTC bus service, a severe lack of affordable housing options, deficient pedestrian and cycling infrastructure, woefully slow climate change mitigation, and much more. We need and deserve a better Toronto. And that's why I'm stepping up. I've had a life full of social action and real work. I've never before sought a career as a politician, but we don't need another 4 years of neglect. With your help, I'm looking forward to building the better Toronto we need and deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Go ahead, Hope.
Okay, I would just like to thank you, Mike, for the Truth and Reconciliation Day treaty. You did a great job. So my name is Hope, and I am young, and I'm running to be city councillor in Ward 6. I want to be the representative that listens to constituents and engages with them. I want them to be able to reach out with me directly on social media or even text me. I'm very young and savvy and know how to work it all. I want to make sure that everyone is heard. Some of my main issues or priorities within the ward are safety. I feel that our area has gotten very unsafe over the past few years, and I want it to be a safe area again. As well, I want to clean up the garbage. It's gotten to a really ridiculous level. And car thefts have been happening a lot recently, which is something we need to deal with. I just want to change the ward and make it how it used to be, and again, stop the neglect that has been happening.
Thank you very much. And Basil, thank you for joining us. You have 2 minutes to introduce yourself, and then we'll get into the questions.
Matthew, for having me on your program here. I'm getting into the campaign or into the election for a few different reasons. I never really considered myself to be someone who would run for a public office. However, listening to the radio, I guess it was in August around 11th or 12th, they said there was a need for candidates. So I looked into what it takes to become a candidate. I'd like to, participate in democracy. I thought if there's a shortage, we better get some people running. We just can't give people easy paths to the office. I've been a career iron worker. I've been building the city from the outside. And I'd like to have an opportunity to go inside and see how I can enact some change. Also, there's many social issues that I'd like to get addressed too. I'm very interested in helping the homeless, of course. That's one of the things that I think Toronto should really take a closer look at, not let this problem get any further down a worse path. Want to create a better quality of life within our neighborhoods, right in the ward itself. If we can improve our safety and community safety at all levels, whether it's on the residential streets or in apartment areas that need to be addressed. There's a lot of industrial and commercial land in our ward. I think that could be utilized to create jobs for people close by. I think that would be an initiative I'd be interested in. So I'm just glad here to be able to have an opportunity to hear other voices and to see what I can contribute. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to start the questions. So if you guys have previously seen debates, you'll notice that we ask a question and then you guys answer, and then Ebony goes. But in the interest of time, we're going to ask our questions together, and then you guys can answer them one at a time, and then we can have a debate on each section of questions. We're going to start with housing and the housing crisis. And Ebony, you go ahead, and then I'll ask my question.
Right. Okay. So I'd like to hear your ideas for where we're going to put new and affordable housing units. I already heard a mention about reappropriating like abandoned lots for, the resource of jobs. But what do you think about using those lots for, building, planning, or maybe we should target the condo developers and maybe make a tax on them? Give me your options in, under 2 minutes, or whatever. Okay.
And then my question would be, in terms of the housing crisis, would you guys be in favor of either a rent freeze and or legalization of rooming houses? Michael, why don't you start, and then we'll go to Hope, and we'll finish off with Basil.
Thank you both for those interesting questions. Housing options is one of the central planks of my campaign, and I have a 4-point plan for addressing housing options in all neighborhoods. The 4 points are the adoption of inclusionary zoning, building more family-oriented apartments, taking advantages of investments we've already made, and including affordable housing in all city developments. So let's look at those 4 things. What does that mean, inclusionary zoning? More than 2/3 of Toronto's residential land is zoned for single-family houses and nothing else. This forces development into the remaining third of residential land, and that drives demand for tall towers. Instead, property owners in all neighborhoods should have the right to build semis and small triplexes or fourplexes. We call this the missing middle. This gentle increase in density provides the opportunities for adult children to live near their parents, for seniors to downsize within their own neighborhoods, and for friends old and new to benefit from moderately priced housing. Second point, building more family-oriented apartments. By 2032, 10 years from now, will need more than 250,000 new housing units in Toronto. And people need relief from crisis level rents and from very high purchase prices. The main streets in our ward are well served by public transit, in the sense that there are transit lines on our main streets. So property owners should have the right to build low-rise and mid-rise apartments without having to appeal to the city to build these apartments. So 6-story, 8-story, maybe even 12-story apartments. And most of those apartments should be family-sized with at least 3 bedrooms. Point number 3, taking advantage of investments already made. We have investments in GO stations, subway stations. Soon we'll have LRT stops. And we should require high-rise development at these high-demand locations. Such housing options allows the development of desirable walkable communities with a variety of local shops, services, and employment opportunities. And my 4th point, including affordable housing in all city developments. All City of Toronto developments, community centers, libraries, public health clinics, even the fire hall that we just built in Downsview should include affordable housing. And public properties with less valuable uses, like green pea surface parking lots, should be leased at reduced rates for nonprofits for community-driven development. Matthew, can you repeat your question about rent freeze, please?
Absolutely. So what I said was, would you be in favor of either a rent freeze and or legalization of rooming houses?
So I'm definitely in favor of the legalization of rooming houses. We need to increase density in our neighborhoods, and that's simple and straightforward to increase that density. The question of rent freezes and rent controls is a complicated one because we want private developers to build rental apartments. We also want the city to be building affordable housing. But a private developer has to have the expectation of earning income from the property. So I think the rent controls that we have now are important, but I would hope and expect that with the adoption of my 4-point plan, as housing options increase in the ward, we can work towards the elimination of rent controls. But we can lift the controls when there is sufficient supply that the market will moderate rents.
Thank you so much. Hope, go ahead.
So to be honest, I'm not too familiar with too much of the housing market. I'm only 19, so I haven't owned my own house or anything. However, I do agree that affordable housing is a major priority of mine. In Toronto, it has become extremely expensive to live in Toronto, to live in the city. And I'm not sure exactly how I would go about it. I do know that we should use city property and try and build. I agree with the apartment style, like having families who live in apartments, because houses have gotten really expensive. The only issue with if we keep building apartments and condos in our ward is that there isn't very many schools for the kids to go to if we want to have more families. So I think we should work on building schools first as well. And then to answer Matthew's question, I don't think it's not safe to have so many people living in a house. I think we should work with trying to put them into an apartment, not too many people. And then with rent freeze, unfortunately, it doesn't make it fair to the landlord. I know everything is going up now like minimum wage went up. So we just need to unfortunately try and strive to figure something out, but then it causes issues on the landlord. So we have to think of the whole picture.
Thank you so much, Hope. Basil, go ahead.
Well, yeah, the housing issue, it certainly has to be addressed. What keeps coming to mind with me is along Shepherd there and other parts of the city where we see boarded up houses waiting for development. I know behind myself personally, there's been 2 houses. It's been over 6 years. And I shake my head every time I see them because they were probably perfectly well-maintained properties before they got boarded up. And the neighbors there that are been waiting there, I guess they've already have an arrangement for their place to sell. But I think there should be some sort of mechanism where we get one final use before they get developed and not allow these buildings just to be boarded up. I've got an idea of things that might help with either encouraging development or keeping those available on the market. And that would be to have a slightly higher tax for properties awaiting development. That would either make the decision for the developer to develop the property quicker, or to keep them in a state where they're maintained and rent them until they're ready for the development. There's so many places along the city streets that I've seen that I know they're valuable and they're just sitting there empty. It's a shame. I do like to see a higher density, like the condominiums on the major streets. I like to see the commercial units underneath. I think that's a good idea. However, a lot of these condo units themselves, they're commodities. They're not really suitable for families at all. They're very small, maybe a couple at best. They're not, yeah, I think there has to be a reorganization of what kind of size to these units we should be allowing for them to build, because they're just maximizing everything, and doesn't seem to be creating a very healthy quality of life. There's a lot of stress to buy these little units and then not have much space to live in. As far as, well, yeah, so I guess that would be one of the ways I would think about incentivizing it, is to have those properties deemed as properties for development. Now, rooming houses, I'm kind of like the idea in a sense. It might be good for an aging population that might want to have other people that they could live with in the same common housing situation. It would have to have certain regulations put in place, of course, because you don't want to have too many people in one house, of course. But I think that would be for many seniors or even young people too, you know, when they're trying to, you know, pay off their education to go into school, I guess. I would consider that. I would have to look at maybe what kind of regulations would be put in place for those types of units. I like the idea of, if we're going to start building towards the inside of neighborhoods on a gradual approach. So working from your major arteries or arterial streets, you would the building adjacent to it, if it goes into a triplex or something like that, then the property next door could also develop in the same manner, but not to start right in the middle of the street somewhere. I would think that would be a little bit too disruptive. So it'd be more of a gradual approach that I would look at. And rent freezes, that was the other thing we're looking at. I think for the next for the next little while, anyways, particularly with rent freezes, I would try to hold the line on any kind of increase. In many ways, that's my position on many aspects of my platform. We've been through a lot. The pandemic has disrupted so many lives. It's made a lot of uncertainty for people. So holding any kind of increase at bay would be something that I would be working towards. No, I would, yeah, definitely be no increases. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Basil. And now, if you guys like, the floor is open for an open floor debate on this topic.
Well, Basil, you say that having a gentle increase in density in the middle of neighborhoods is disruptive. And I would argue that that's a good thing. We need some creative disruption. We've had far too many years of go slow, change nothing approach. People need someplace to live. 260,000 new housing units in Toronto in the next 10 years. Where are people going to live? It's not a big disruption to a neighborhood to have a semi or a triplex or a fourplex. And it's a great opportunity to leverage the investment we already have in communities. And with a gentle increase in density, we increase the life of the neighborhood. In fact, we have neighborhoods in Toronto that are depopulating. Our goal should always be to have a 15-minute community. The idea that within a 15-minute walk or a 5-minute cycle ride, people can walk to the amenities that they need in their daily lives, to grocery stores, to schools, to places of employment, to parks, and so on, and shopping, of course. And the way to support that kind of development is a gentle increase in density. So we need to have it. Otherwise, we just have more of the same, and people become more desperate for housing.
No, I do hear what you're saying, Mike, and I'm much in line with what you're proposing here, because I like that idea of having a neighborhood that is accessible with all the shops and amenities that might be needed. I just say by adjacent property. But in many ways, now that we're discussing this a little bit further, I've seen throughout neighborhoods where a smaller house is put down, demolished, and then it's like a huge structure that's put onto it. So in many ways, yeah, that could probably house three families easily. And I would tend to say I'm in agreement with you. My adjacent property kind of progression would be so that the people on the interior of a neighborhood don't all of a sudden have these large structures just, beside them all of a sudden. So like it'd be the house from the perimeter out, it would work its way inward, sort of thing. It's a way of structuring it in a manner that allows people to, if they want to keep that bit of little neighborhood within their core of their neighborhood, is what I'm kind of, that's the thought I'm having on the matter. Thanks.
Understood. I can see what you mean. Nobody wants a giant condo out of their bungalow window, but the gradual move towards urbanization is definitely inevitable. So how do we make that a smooth transition for everybody?
Yes.
Do you have that hope?
I think, I'm so sorry, can you repeat the question?
We're discussing the idea of putting larger, multi-accommodational buildings in suburban type areas or single home dwelling neighborhoods, and how that might be a disturbance, seen by the eyes of the people who are already living there. The not in my backyard, or I would like it to remain the same. But for the case of inclusionary housing, how things must change.
I don't agree with that. I don't think that will be the best idea to add the random buildings there. Or I think that the same issue with the schools is we can always talk about adding more buildings, more condos, but in the ward there's very few schools. So we can have a ward with, then their schools are going to be overpopulated. I went to school and it was so overpopulated. I went to school in this ward and I just graduated 2 years ago, and there's so many people who live in this, and we really want to make it a family ward. So we need to find places to house people. And for example, like in Armour Heights, there was a house, it's like a little corner. It could fully fit like 2 houses, and they knocked it down to become a park, and there's just a park around the corner. So it kind of seems unnecessary for that space. I just think we need to make sure to use our space wisely.
Right. We have to use our space wisely. And so, Ebony, to be clear, I'm talking about a maximum of 4 stories, a maximum of 4 units, on an existing single unit lot. And I think Basil made my point for me. I live in a small story and a half. My neighbor could knock down his house and put up a huge house, a 3 or 4 story house for just one person, for just one family. And currently that's acceptable. Well, put up a structure of the same size that could hold 2, 3, or 4 families, that doesn't change the effect on me and gives us a gentle increase in density. We really have to think seriously about this. People need places to live. And it shouldn't be that the people who got in first are the only people who get to live in a neighborhood.
I think it's, I think it's important we build a quality residence though too, because I've worked on many projects where the condominiums, the size of these units is just unacceptable. I mean, I can appreciate what you're saying about, like we're talking about, you know, a smaller home gets demolished and a larger structure for one family. It seems like it could be utilized much better. And I think when we're talking about development, it really has to be some sort of mechanism in place how to utilize the development as to the best of the ability for the neighborhood as well as for the city at large. Yes.
Right. So I just want to be clear. I'm not talking about building condominium apartments.
Oh, I understand.
In neighborhoods. So in my neighborhoods, there are single family houses. I live in the Roding neighborhood. There are single family houses. There are semis. Why couldn't there be triplexes at Wilmington and Overbrook near Chat? There are lots of duplexes and triplexes. Are those people bad neighbors? Is that a bad neighborhood? Obviously, that's not the case. We need to have change. We need to accommodate more people in the ward. Gentle densification, I would argue, is better than having tall towers. People like to live closer to the ground, and it makes for a more pleasant neighborhood.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. We're gonna move on to our next question, or series of questions, or set of questions is actually more accurate. It's going to be on crime. Ebony, go ahead.
What are your ideas to implement for infrastructures, you know, to our communities to reduce crime, other than an increased police involvement?
And my question would be, one of the mayoral candidates, should he be elected, it wants to bring back carding as a tool for the police to use. How do you respond to this and why? So we started with Mike last time, so let's start with Hope, then we'll do Basil, and then Mike, you can finish us off.
So I believe that besides police, I think police presence is the #1 thing that you can do. That is how people feel safe. I think they should be circling the ward 24/7, the side streets, or even having like a community safe watch program. I've heard of that happening. There's Facebook groups where they report break-ins happening in broad daylight and attacks, but nothing happens. It doesn't go up like to mayor, city council, or like nothing happens from it, and then they just feel even more unsafe. So our area used to be one of like the safest areas, and I think it completely went downhill over the past few years. I'm not too sure what else in terms besides police presence, but I think we need a much higher of them. I think that is what makes people feel the most safe.
Thank you. Basil, go ahead.
I think a way of improving a police infrastructure within a community without actually having the police necessarily on site all the time. We've seen it in certain areas of undergrounds, and we've seen it in I was going to even say public washrooms, where there is an emergency button, locations that we see on campuses and whatnot, that can be accessed by anybody in the community or any member if they see something going on, or if it's the person themselves. And these can be maybe distributed in certain locations that are deemed necessary to have such until things might settle down. They could be temporary, they could be permanent. I'm not in favor of cameras everywhere, that's for sure. I'm just saying if there's some way we can build an infrastructure that allows for a quick response. Something like that might be useful in areas of concern. Well, police relations, I mean, that's something that should always be worked on within the communities. And that could be done with some community meetings and whatnot. I think we could organize something like that. See what citizens would be involved and maybe keeping an eye out. I like that idea too. That would be something where they keep an eye out. The carding issue. Oh, I am not in favor of that at all. That just seems like something that is just wrong on so many levels. I don't even know how it became a thing that we would even consider having in our society. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. I'd be against that on all levels. And that's pretty much all I can say about that. It's just a terrible practice. All right,
Thank you. Mike, go ahead.
Thanks. And an important question, and one that concerns all of us. First of all, carding. Carding is inappropriate. We should not be doing it. People should not be stopped on the street at random. Policing should be for our community, not of our community. Policing, the police service needs to act as a community partner. It should be concentrating on security, crime prevention, and solving crimes. It has to take its direction from the community. I think it's important that we have a police force that's as diverse as our city, that it looks like the city, that it's transparent in its actions, that it's clearly accountable. I think that the police service needs to prioritize de-escalation in its training and its practice. We've seen far too many examples of situations getting out of control. When we have complete communities, when we have 15-minute communities, when we have people on the street, when we have eyes on the street, when the community is walkable and we don't have a focus on automobiles, then we have, by definition, a safer community. I think we need police on the beat, but I'm not convinced that driving around with pairs of officers in patrol cars is the way to do it. I would sum up by saying that safety is a community responsibility. The police are our partners who help enforce and ensure that security, and that different neighborhoods and different communities may want different approaches to policing, and we need to hear what those communities say, and we need to respect what those communities say.
Thank you so much, Mike. And now the floor is open for a debate. Go ahead.
Well, I guess we should debate, I guess, maybe some of the police presence in our neighborhood. I don't really know, what might actually be the best solution for it. I like to put more infrastructure in, of course, and make it an accessible thing for people to really respond to policing in their neighborhoods. And I'm sure there are ways and means of doing that. but yeah, it should be, policing should always be kept in the light, and we should always move forward on making sure our relationships are good throughout the community with and police. Yes.
You say you're against cameras. I am very much for cameras. I believe, you know, we're in 2022. Pretty much everyone's got a camera on them, and usually phone or something. Otherwise, a lot of people have CCTV or, you know, dash cameras for personal use. I'm one of those people who, if I caught something, I would probably try and find a way to get that footage to you, but not everybody is like that. And it is difficult for police to obtain personal cameras, you know?
Yeah, okay, I acknowledge that. I hear that very much. I'm talking about surveillance cameras that are just installed and put in place. I'm not.
You can get a maybe
yeah.
a lot easier than trying to obtain footage from a private civilian. I believe CCTV, especially laneways, you know, where you've got all the houses on the outside, and then you have got those laneways where we all park our cars. I think it should be a lot more well lit, and they should all have a CCTV camera. There's a lot of crime that goes on in those alleyways, and not just.
Well, yeah, I could see that being
any gender to walk.
Yeah, I can agree with. I can see that in places that are deemed necessary for sure. I as an expense, I can't see it everywhere.
So I'm not concerned about the expense issue. I think the issue is one of the expectation of privacy, that people have a right to privacy, and they have a right to anonymity when they're out and about in the city. But Ebony, I would agree with you that security in awkward locations like you've just described, that's a significant issue and needs to be addressed. Part of the problem is that we should never have allowed the construction of such infrastructure in the first place. We should not be building alleyways or laneways or passages where people feel unsafe, where they may in fact be unsafe. And as you point out, that's an issue for people of all genders. That's an issue for people of all ages. So as part of remediation, where we have bad infrastructure, we might need CCTV, but CCTV isn't going to prevent crime. It might help us catch criminals. So yes, CCTV where necessary, but let's try to build a city in which closed circuit television isn't necessary. One aspect of police enforcement that I think is crucial and has been neglected over the last 4 years, over the last 8 years, is traffic enforcement. Since the last municipal election, over 1,500 people have been killed or seriously injured in our city, over 100 people in our ward alone. We can see on the major roadways in our ward, on Wilson, on Bathurst, on Dufferin, on Keele, on Steeles, on Finch, that people speed, and they speed with impunity. We're slowly lowering the speed limits in our city, which is a good thing, but lowering speed limits without enforcement doesn't do very much. If you're hit by a car going 50 kilometers an hour, you're going to be seriously injured, and you may die. If you're hit by a car going 30 kilometers an hour, you will be seriously injured, but your odds of survival are much, much higher. At a minimum, we have to rigorously enforce the speed limits we have now.
Thank you, Mike. Hope, do you have anything to add? And you didn't comment on the issue of carding. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
No, I agree that we should not be doing it. It's not safe. It's not a smart idea. It's not good. I was just gonna say about the cameras. I think when you're outdoors, you're already outdoors. Like, unfortunately, there isn't privacy, and we are in 2022. There's cameras everywhere, and with the infrastructure that was created, we already have an issue where we need to build more houses, more apartments. So I think as we need to get rid of those, we can't go back and fix it right now. I think that's like the least of the priorities. And then, Mike, you were commenting on the speed limit. I think that the speed limit from 50 to 30, it wouldn't make such a big difference. And it's not enforced. You're right. Like, it isn't enforced when the speed limit changes. And it's also, this is something I noticed the other day. I was driving on Faywood, and like by the school Faywood, and there's no school zone, like 30-kilometer sign. People just go 40 there. And then as soon as you go on the side street right beside it, it's 30.
Well, Hope, I have to disagree with you. The statistics are very clear. You get hit by a car at 50 kilometers an hour, you're probably going to die. You get hit by a car at 30 kilometers an hour, you have a decent chance of living. It depends. If you're younger, if you're older, regardless of the speed, your chance of survival is much less. We're supposed to have a vision zero policy in the city to bring traffic deaths down to zero. I would argue we have zero vision in this city because traffic deaths are not going down. We're averaging more than 40 deaths a year. Deaths on our street. Just 500 meters from the incumbent counselor's office, someone was killed on a bicycle just a few weeks ago, not far from where I live. 2 young women were struck by a car making a left turn. One of them was killed. It's not appropriate. It's not acceptable to me that people are killed and seriously injured on our streets. Speed limits make a big difference if they're enforced. And I've also, Hope, I've driven on Faywood and Wilmington. I've ridden my bike on Faywood and Wilmington. And the posted speed limit might be 40, but you're a driver, you know that people drive faster than 40 on that street. They drive 50 on that street. They drive 60 on that street. On Keele Street, on Dufferin and other major streets in our ward, the limit may be 50, but people drive 60, 65. On Dufferin, the limit is 60 in parts. People drive 70, 75 kilometers an hour. If you hit someone at that speed, you're going to kill that person. So the speed limit makes a difference. Speed kills.
When I was younger,
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Open, and then Basil, you can jump in afterwards.
no worries. Just a quick comment. When I think I was in grade 4, I was riding my bike across York Downs and a car hit me. So I'm very it does still make me nervous to say, even as a driver still. So I do understand that. So
Go ahead, Basil. Oh, sorry, go ahead. You're not done.
more police presence, like nothing happened after when I got hit by the car. Like I just was like scared and shook and like nothing changed at it.
If only we could have caught that driver on CCTV, got his license plate and had him appropriately charged.
Yeah.
So more stop camera, traffic cams, speed traps, etc. I think that's all very important. And I am a certified CPST. I agree with you, Michael. Speed is a huge contributor to the death in a collision, especially when you talk about like getting rear-ended versus oncoming, the speed doubles, right? So 50 miles an hour, both vehicles traveling 50 miles an hour, that's 100 kind of PSI when you hit. So insides explode at these kind of rates of speed and true. So that was macabre. Sorry I said that. moving on to a
No,
slightly-
we're gonna let Basil, he had something to say, and then
Well,
we'll move on to the next set.
yeah, I was just gonna comment, like, I know within our residential streets, there are speed calming measures that we can put. I've seen it on different YouTube programs with different designs where the streets can be narrowed a little bit, it calms, it slows the traffic down. Their streets are built wide, and that just only encourages wide and flat, they encourages speed. Out on the arterial roads, definitely, that would be an appropriate place to have the CCTV cameras, would be on high density areas of traffic, known intersections, that are busy. And yeah, I would agree with that. And that enforcement should be put in place or more enforcement should be put in place on some of these arterial roads to really calm things down. I know everybody seems to be in a hurry in the city, but we've got to calm things down at times. And the best way to do that is with a police presence and enforcement. All right, thank you.
I love that. The idea again comes back to urban design. So,
Yes.
Looking forward in the future to how we're going to develop neighborhoods. I think that, yeah, it's got to be a high impact on safety, and then speed, of course. And Hope, I did like that you mentioned schools a lot. I think another great way to contribute to the reducing of crime, after school programs, extracurriculars. Keep the youth interested, keep them busy, keep them off the streets, and keep them from being bored. We all know what boredom leads to.
Police should go into schools as well more. That didn't really not happen very much when I was in school, and they should talk about being safe when you're outside.
Agreed. What's funny? I actually suffered a house fire just this past week, and of all the training manuals or briefings I got on fire safety throughout various points in my life, what I remembered most was what I was taught in elementary school. The little fire hall that we went to, and the Care Bears, actually. So yeah, teaching the youth while they're young and their minds are sponges, very important. And so yeah, more traffic safety. It'd be nice also, police, when they were coming to schools. Remember, Matthew, you were talking about that, when the police would come into school and talk to children, not to patrol the halls, but just to educate the youth when they're still moldable and young. That's nice.
Yes. So I'm just looking at my watch. Moving along, we're gonna hit our last set of questions, and then we'll go into the closing statements. So we're gonna talk about City Hall culture. So Ebony has a question, so she'll ask it, and then I'll ask mine. Go ahead, Ebony.
Mine is simple. Do you think that the city councilors are currently receiving too many perks, in the forms of housing allowances, a free TTC pass, and a free parking pass? They get a parks pass, recreational parks, etc. They get free cabs for events, etc. Yeah, what do you think about that? Do you think we could be spending that money better, or do they deserve it?
And my question would be, due to the removal of the encampments in Trinity Bellwoods Park, which apparently was an order from interim city manager Tracy Cook, there's an outcry to have her fired. How do you respond to this, and why? Oh, sorry, Basil, we're going to start with you, and then Mike will go to you, and then Hope, you can finish us off.
Well, okay, yeah, the removal of an encampment, that sounded like it was pretty awful business, that's for sure. And we need to do better on those regards. In that sort of situation, leaving something to fester is not a solution. So something had to be done. They just went about it the wrong way, obviously. So the thing to do that would have been more appropriate would have some sort of task force that could go in there and see what the individual needs of these people are, and then bring them in as a client of one of the shelters, or create a system where they're going to get the specific type of help that they're going to need. Now, encampments, from what I understand, there's a lot of issues with not only just being homeless, but with the drugs and alcoholism and mental health issues that accompany all that sort of thing, right? So just moving people along is not gonna solve any problems. We need to get them the help that they need. It's the right thing to do. Obviously, we got to put the resources to to help the people that have the mental health issues, to see how we can stabilize things for them and get them a shelter where they can build their life from. Everybody needs housing. You can't fix yourself when you're on the street. When you're on the street, there's no possible way. I mean, it's impossible. How are you going to get help that you need? You need a platform in which to work off. That would be a housing. I know the shelter system is not perfect by any means. You go in there, they don't feel safe, and I get it. I can understand that. And then the addictions will just take you out, or the alcoholism, or your mental health. You just can't be around other people. So we got to work on getting people the help that they need. If it's addiction help they need, we got to get them the direction there. But
What
they
about
have to have a place to work from.
What about the calls, the outcry to fire Tracy Cook?
Well, this was ultimately her decision.
It was a motion in council presented by Stephen Holiday, Ward 2, and it was a directive ultimately from Tracy Cook. She took the blame. She said it was her, and now there's a public outcry for her to be fired.
It was her responsibility to manage this, this is how she felt. This is how she felt to go about doing this. Then, yeah, I would have to agree that she should resign from that, or at the very, like you say, fire. I hate to fire anybody, but I mean, when mistakes happen, that sounds like a very big mistake. It could have been handled much differently. It should have been handled much differently. That's for sure. And there's no reason why it couldn't have been handled differently. It's a matter of getting the resources. I mean, we got to target the resources to the needs, right? And we got to give people a place where they can work on their issues. And they can't do it on the streets, and we got to do better. So I would say housing first on that matter for sure for these people, and get them the help that they needed, and link them up with the resources.
And to Ebony's question.
Oh, which was, sorry, again?
The perks.
Perks.
Oh, the perks, yes.
That are on top that looked like Tracy Cook's salary, I believe, was like $300,000 about, plus $14,000 in benefits. Just this past year, she received a 13% raise from 2001 to 2002. Sorry, from
I mean, that all sounds
2021, 13%.
Unfortunately, I get a little bit of break up there, but yeah, that sounds all pretty ridiculous. I mean, a 13%, I don't know of anyone who got a 13% raise through the pandemic or just after the pandemic. That's got to be reined in. Sorry, you're breaking up a little bit.
Oh, saying too many perks. Like, so she made that much money. Other counselors make, less, but then some of them get housing allowances. Some of them get, parking passes. Plus,
I mean,
I think it's a little, if we're having to pay for it out of our pockets.
Yeah, I mean, if you already have a residence, I mean, if you live in somewhere, why would you need an extra housing? Or, I mean, like, I've got a place to live already. I mean, okay, so I have to commute. I have to commute a little bit. That's just the way things are. A lot of these perks, they seem pretty excessive, and I would have a much closer look at seeing how we could rein that in. Some of the perks I can see being a benefit if the person actually uses them and is in the community and interacts with people while he's in the community using them. Like you say, parks and recreation. If he's using a parks and recreation and he's getting out he's in the park and he's interacting, using it with other members of the community, I can see that being okay. Myself, I probably wouldn't have the time to use most of these perks. I would see if I could defer them. Say, like, if they gave me a TTC pass, I would see if one of the shelters could use it, a director. I give it to a director, see if he could make use of it, share it through the community somehow, like a pass or like whatever it might be, and so that it gets used within the community as a means of allowing people to get around. If I couldn't get other members of the council to kind of agree to bring things in, I would just have to take matters personally and see how I could deploy them in my community. Like I say, to I know there's a women's shelter behind where I live. If they could, if the director needed to pass to allow people to use it, I'd see if I could do something like that, I suppose. Thanks.
Thank you. Mike, go ahead.
Thanks for the question. Homelessness is a tragedy. We shouldn't have homeless people in our city. The solution to homelessness is homes, not policing. I'm against encampments in our parks, but the solution is not policing. Basil's right that there are often significant mental health issues for people on the street. Policing is not the appropriate response to that. I talked earlier in our set of questions about policing, about the importance of de-escalation. I don't think it's appropriate for police to be attending most mental health calls. There are other professionals who should be responding to those calls. People need to be housed. You heard me say earlier that I have a 4-point program for increasing housing in the city, for providing housing options in all neighborhoods. I'm not familiar with the particulars of this civil servant and the decision to send police into the encampments, but the responsibility ultimately rests with council, and that's where we have to look for answers and for accountability. So to be clear, homelessness is a tragedy, and we should not have people living on the streets. We should not have a city in which people have no option other than to live on the streets. Ebony, you asked a question about City Hall culture, and I know your question is about perks. You've asked this question before, and I appreciate that it's important to you. The city has a budget of over $9 billion. I believe we're the 4th largest government in the country after the federal government, the Ontario and Quebec governments. The sums that you're talking about are very small in a $9 billion budget, but that doesn't mean that the sums that you're talking about are unimportant, because your question, if I understand it, is about culture. And we do need a change in culture. The 3 of us are running because we don't think it's a good idea that people are there for term after term after term. Matthew, you and I talked about this just before we went live, so to speak. Incumbency is a big problem. Not because an incumbent by definition is not capable. We can think of lots of examples in the past of people who served our city well and served for a long time. But when people are career politicians and things don't change, I think that's a real problem. Ebony, I'll address one particular perk that you mentioned. You talked about the TTC pass. I think that councillors are well paid, and they don't need to have free passes to anything. Like everybody else in the city, they can pay their way. I think that there are lots of people in the city who can't afford to pay their way, and we didn't talk about that today. But for low-income earners, I think it's important that low income not be a barrier to accessing programs offered by the city. But I want to make the point about TTC. I think it should be a policy that city councillors must take this TTC or walk or drive to all of their meetings, to all of their city functions. I don't think there should be parking for city councillors at Nathan Phillips Square. I don't think councillors should be driving everywhere. There are lots of people in our city who don't have the option of driving. We didn't get to talk about frequent, reliable public transit, one of the central planks of my campaign. I think that if city councillors had to take the TTC everywhere, they would have a much better understanding of the poor quality transit system that we have. So I would sum it up by saying we need a culture change at City Hall. On many issues, we need changes. And so, Ebony, I think your question was a good one, and I thank you for it.
Thank you. I think it was very well thought out. And I agree. And I'm excited from all the candidates we've been interviewing so far that I'm glad that you're here, Hope, and being so young. There was another couple of young people. Chloe was young. And we do need fresh, hip, new ideas, but we need people who are in touch with what the people on the street need these days. No more, lofty ideals, floating down from fat cats in big houses. We need people who understand what it's like to be the everyday person on a menial budget. We're all struggling here. So yes, thank you very much. Do you have anything to say, Hope?
Yes, I do. To answer your question, I think that the perks are unnecessary. City councilors, they do get paid, and it's very much like any other job. You got to go to work, you got to figure out how to get there. Like, it's your responsibility to pay for it. And the perks, the money that's going to the perks should be going back to the residents of Toronto. I think it's unnecessary. And what Mike said about taking the TTC, I feel like I recently only got my license, so I have grown up taking TTC, and it is pretty unreliable. There's a lot, and I take it to school even now. There's so many delays, and they were supposed to be like all automated by this year to be faster, and it isn't. It's very slow. So that is something that as a city we need to work on. And then Matthew's question about the camping is, I think it was awful, and the houseless. I've always been it's always bothered me, the houseless people, and I just want there to be more shelters for them to go to. And in terms of firing her, I think, I don't know, I'm not too familiar on the topic, so I don't want to comment too much on it. However, I do know that it probably wasn't just like a one-person decision. Usually it's a lot of people. So I think it should have been more thought out in that way.
Thank you so much for everyone that came out. I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to, this is going on YouTube as soon as it's completed. But by the end of the day, we do have a few more debates. But so this is your chance to speak directly to the voters in your closing statement, why they should vote for you. Don't forget to include your website and any other pertinent information that you wanted to include. Michael, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Hope, and we'll close it out with Basil.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Ebony, for hosting this debate. It's been great fun, and it's really important. And I think it's important to point out who isn't here, the sitting councillor who didn't think it important enough to meet the people who he's running against and to meet the voters of Ward 6. We need and deserve a better Toronto. We need principled, forward-looking city government. We need real leadership. We need change. Since the last municipal election, countless residents of our ward have told me that we need someone to step up. So I'm stepping up for York Centre, the ward where I've made my home for the last 25 years. In my interesting and challenging professional career, I've demonstrated the empathy, the analytical skills, and the drive necessary to be a counselor who gets things done. Amongst other things, I've worked in a Jewish family and child service mental health center, managed an animal hospital, taught at both the college and secondary levels, and run my own consulting practice. Now, I'm working with a dynamic startup. In short, real work in the real world. Since the fall of 2021, as a member of the official community resource group, I've been advising on the development of the Downsview lands, including the airport and Downsview Park. I've got the skills, the real world experience, and the drive to serve Ward 6 well. And with your help, I'm looking forward to building the better Toronto we need and deserve. Please go to my website at mike.arkin.ca and see my 3-point program for safe streets, housing options in all neighborhoods, and frequent, reliable public transportation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hope, go ahead. And I do want to apologize to you guys. We have a repair guy here right now, so my dog's going nuts. I do apologize for that. I'll try to get out as much of that as I can, but I don't, not sure if I can. But anyway, sorry, go ahead, Hope.
No worries. I just want to thank you guys so much for holding this debate. I'm young and fresh with new ideas. I'm next generation. And my website is voteforhope.ca, and I have an Instagram as well. I just did want to say something that I noticed happen. I placed 3 signs yesterday on Bathurst, like north of York Downs. Someone sent me an image of it this morning, and then like an hour later, they were all gone. So I really don't want this to become an issue. I called them the one, they said they didn't have any reports about it. So I just hope that we can get past it and it's not an issue. But yeah, if anyone has any questions or anything, I check the Instagram DMs, emails, and everything. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And Basil, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mike and Ebony, for hosting the show. It's a great opportunity for people to hear us. I'm really appreciative of it. I got a few things I've always been thinking about over the years, particularly with the city. We're playing catch up with getting our transit developed. Over these years, we should have been developing it all the time as the city was growing. It should have been under progress all the time. I know from east to west, we need to do better. The reason I got into this election is because I did hear on the radio in August about the shortage of candidates, and I didn't want anyone to get a free pass. I never really considered it. So this has been a really great opportunity for me to learn about the city. And thank you, Michael and Hope, for putting many things on my radar now. I've opened my eyes to a few more things. It's been great meeting you here. There was a bit of what really got me emotional. There was how we were talking about the encampments, and there's a couple of things I've always thought I'd like to see developed more. So a lot of talk about basic income. If at all anything were to come of a basic income, I would like it to start with people of our lowest ranks that are having these type of mental health, addiction issues, and so forth, and homelessness crisis. But also there's a disabled population of our city too. This is where basic income should start. So often the disabled are tied to their benefits or their when they get the housing, it's all tied together, and it makes it impossible for them to really kind of pull themselves up in any direction. I think a basic income that is directed and it's just theirs and theirs alone. It's not contingent on whether you're living in this housing or that type of housing. It's not contingent on whether you have a partner or you're living independently. I think a basic income for the people of our greatest need would be a place to start. And it's something that I'd like to have I'd be taking a closer look at come the future. And then again, I'd just like to thank everyone. It's been a wonderful experience. Thanks very much.
Thank you guys so much. I just want to say real quick, I've never lived in Ward 6, but I've had the opportunity to work in Ward 6. And now I'm a delivery driver. So I actually drove through your ward the other day, and the construction on, I believe it's Wilson. Yeah, so I understand there are challenges with your ward, and that's why the last 8 years have been rough and we need change. And so good luck to all of you for the rest of your campaign trail. I'm excited to see what happens, not only for the city of Toronto, but especially for Ward 6. And I wish you guys nothing but luck. And with that, this is the end of the debate. And again, thank you guys for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Basil. Thank you, Hope.
Yep.
Nice to have met you today.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It's been a great experience.
Media.
Bye, everyone.
All right, take care. Best of luck, everyone. Bye.